Portugal, located just west of Spain and with an open border to the ocean, wanted to establish power outside of Europe because they were not capable of asserting power within their own continent. The Portuguese took the lead in exploration, but that is not to say that they held on to that title forever. The sponsor who jump-started the idea of navigating lands outside of Europe is a man that goes by the name of Prince Henry the Navigator. He founded a school for navigators on the southwestern coast of Portugal. Following the creation of his school, Portuguese ships embarked on journeys along the western coast of Africa. These fleets were in search of gold. A lot of people associate exploration with Christopher Columbus, but it is important to note that Columbus was rejected by Portugal when he asked them to fund his voyages. Thanks to advancements in inaccurate maps, compasses, sextants, and the knowledge of wind patterns, Bartholomew Diaz used the westerly winds to his advantage and rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488. He feared mutiny from his crew and abandoned his voyage. 10 years after Diaz, Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape and stopped at Muslim-controlled ports. His fleet then crossed the Arabian Sea and reached the port of Calicut in southwestern India in May 1498. He announced to the population that he was in search of Christians and spices. With luck, he got the spices he requested and returned to Portugal. Please note that spices such as pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg had always been a big part of European life. By obtaining spices in the east and later capturing trading ports, the Portuguese government was creating a new source of revenue for the country and a chance to become a big player in the trade industry within Europe. Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque set up ports at Goa, which is in present-day Mumbai. Goa became the new headquarters for the Portuguese in their newly explored lands. Albuquerque, in search of spices, set sail for Malacca and arrived in 1511. Malacca was a crucial stopping point in the spice trade. After a bloody battle and the massacre of a great deal of Arabs, Albuquerque took control of the city. The massacre of the local Arab population weakened the Arab control of the local spice trade and opened doors for the Portuguese to the Moluccas, aka the Spice Islands. The determined leaders and fleets out of Portugal were able to use Malacca to send expeditions eastward to China and the Spice Islands. Upon reaching their destinations, they signed a treaty with the local leaders for the export of goods to the European market. Even after over half a century, the Portuguese government continued to lack the power, the population, and the determination to colonize areas other than the few trading posts of India and China. One might ask how such a small country can be so successful in the beginning. It was a matter of the guns they possessed and their quality seamanship. The typical and modest Portuguese fleet was made of 3 ships and 20 guns. These guns were hardly used for military means, rather just a strong weapon of intimidation. As time went on, the Portuguese task forces became more heavily equipped and forceful with their naval operations. The Portuguese also established lands in South America in what is now known as Brazil, hence the reason Brazil is the only non-Spanish speaking country in South America. In short, the navigators of Portugal were able to inflict military superiority over their opponents in India and China. Later on in the 16th century, Portugal, and Spain for that matter, began to face rivalry from the Dutch and the French. More so, the Dutch and French were better financed, which is what made them such a serious threat. Overall, the Portuguese trading posts that were established in the East did not affect the local governments to a great extent because they had strong monarchical states, especially in the Chinese mainland. They were able to resist change. In Japan, there was a large increase in the popularity of Christianity, imposed by the Jesuits and missionaries who were eventually expelled and persecuted. The Portuguese first landed in Japan in 1543, where they were initially welcomed for their tobacco, eyeglasses, clocks, and various European goods. To sum up, the Portuguese movement towards the east, specifically India, China, and the Spice Islands, was jump-started by Henry the Navigator. Portuguese fleets steadily moved down the coast of Africa and eventually landed in and claimed Calicut. Following that, Malacca was claimed in order to gain access to the Spice Islands. Spices became being the primary motive.